Hey everybody, I'm finally back with another video, and today I want to show you how you can make chords that sound like this. So obviously that sounds very 80s, doesn't it? So I'm going to break down how you could do something like this in a way that's very simple and not super theory dense. So one thing to understand when you're constructing a chord, right, is in Western harmony we have a thing called the third, which usually is going to define like, okay, is this chord going to be happy? To oversimplify it, right? Is it going to be happy? Or a little bit more sad and tragic? But we also have a thing that we can do, which is actually making a chord and calling it a suspended chord. And basically all we're doing is removing the concept of having a third, which makes the chord a bit more ambiguous and sort of, just from a tonal perspective, it's not quite as easy to understand what the harmony is doing. So for example, we could take this chord. What if we did this? Or this? So something like that might sound familiar to you if you've ever listened to classical music. Suspended chords were often used like that in that sort of context. And you may have also, if you're really paying attention, keyed into something about it that sounds very 80s. We have two notes that are basically a whole step apart. And that's going to form the foundation of what I'm explaining to you today. So if we go back to this minor chord, the first thing we could do to make it sound a bit more 80s is to kind of add an extension to it, right? Make it into an A minor 7 with just a very basic, simple voicing. Or we could be like this and add another extension, or even another. But a lot of times that can muddy things up a bit too much. So what I'm going to do is stick to this minor 7 voicing, and we're going to add in the 11th, which we can just think of an extension. We don't have to think too much about its function or anything like that. And then just move it down here. And immediately it sounds very ethereal. Right? And we could do this again with a different chord. Obviously, some of the things I did in there make it sound a bit more contemporary, but that's not what we're going to explain today. So back to this chord, what's going on? We have a cluster of 3 whole tones apart. It could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 4, if you want to, right? You can do all sorts of stuff to give it a whole tone sound. But anyways, that's the basic idea. Take a chord, anything, we'll throw our fingers on the keyboard. Right? Watch this. Let's move it up, kind of adjust the voicing a little bit. And then think a little bit later about sort of what its function is. Right? What function would this serve in your progression? Right? I don't know why I'm crossing my hands, right? This chord on its own, but whatever the bass note is going to define what the chord means. Right, so now we have a D7 sus chord. And by the way, if you like this video, I demand that you subscribe to my channel, that you comment, and that you share it with your friends. So if you like this video, feel free to do that. And if you want to be my #1 simp, you can subscribe to me on Patreon. Okay, so the next thing I want to explain another way we can use suspensions, and we're going to use this in terms of dominant chords. Now, I used a more advanced sort of sound within the progression that I made, which would be like a D7 flat 9 sort of sound. Or you can also use a different altered dominant quality, something like this. And that's all well and good, but that's a lot more advanced. And let's stick with the sort of suspended sound I was talking about before. So one thing we could do is take a dominant chord and make it a suspended dominant chord. And one of my favorites, I call it the Citypop chord because it's kind of like the essential sound when it comes to making that old school Citypop sort of vibe. So what we're going to do is take our G chord and then resolve it down, which is a sound everybody knows, right? We could also do something like this, which is taking a G chord and I think this is a great sound too. It's very simple, very easy to understand. But another thing we could do is take that sus sound, or that sussy bussy sound that we all know and love, and we can sort of build on that. So you can take a 7th chord and make it a suspended chord. And I'm just going to show you a quick voicing without explaining too much into detail that you can just sort of mess around with that I think is really fun. And it's a voicing my friend Sheaf showed me many ages ago, and I was really thankful because it's really helped me, inspire me to do a lot of different sort of chord progressions. So what we could do is take this F major 7 chord, add in an extra note here, but instead move it down an octave or two. Wow, that still sounds very 80s. I bet you can think of so many ballads that you may know from that time that sound like this. So what you could just basically do is just think of constructing a chord, a major chord, and then adding a, sorry, I don't play keyboards, so I cross my arms like an idiot. So anyways, we could do, I mean, come on, that sounds so 80s. Or you can just sort of add sus13s kind of however you want. You could take that same chord. Obviously, since I can't play, I'm going to do it in a dumb way. Sounds beautiful no matter what. So that's enough explaining for now. I'm not really going to get into the craziness of doing like these very sort of kind of sounds because that is a lot more difficult to explain, and that's its own video. Okay, so I hope that was interesting and that it inspired you to sort of experiment, and if you were feeling like you were in a bit of a rut or not kind of nailing that sort of 80s feel that you were looking for, it gave you a bit of inspiration on sort of where you can go to get that sound. There's a lot of other things going on that we can do to get a very 80s sort of feel, but in this case I just wanted to explain it in a very simple and easy way to understand. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.